Welcome you all. Myself Divya, Assistant Professor, Department of Information Technology in Madurai Sivakasi Nada's Pioneer Meenakshi Women's College. And today I'm going to discuss a few words about data link layer protocols in the computer networks, which comes under Unit 3 and Module 1. And today I'm going to cover two topics which comes under noiseless channel protocols, data link protocols, that is unrestricted simplex protocol and then stop and wait protocol. First, before move on to the session, let's discuss why we need protocol and the overall process for data transmissions in the data link layer. First, protocol in the data link layer are designed to perform important functions such as framing, error control and then flow control. These functions makes the entire data transmission in a reliable and efficient manner, because during data transmission the overall processing must be reliable to the both server and the receiver, which will be handled easily or smoothly by these protocols. Okay, before move on to the protocols, first to discuss framing. Actually, framing is the process of dividing the stream of bits from the physical layer into data frames. Actually, its length maybe ranges from thousands, hundreds to thousand bytes. Basically, framing helps the receiver identify the beginning and end of each message during transmission. Okay, and then these types of framing makes the entire data transmission in a easier manner, because the entire packets from the physical layer, from the network layer, will be split up into small chunks of data frames, and then it will be shared to the physical layer in bits of data or else bytes of data. Okay, so the overall process, the overall packets from the data link layer may be huge. That will be split up and the overall data will be transferred as a small chunks, makes the overall entire transmission easier. Okay, for example, if the file is so larger, it will be so easy for a data link layer to transfer that file. Okay, and then the next one is error control mechanism. Basically, error control mechanism is used to detect and correct the errors, overall errors which will be occurred throughout the data transmission process. Actually, error correction or error control mechanism ensures that the corrupted, damaged or lost frames, these are the basic things which will be affected through the which will be handled through the error control mechanisms. If these types of data frames have been received by the receiver, then it will not be used perfectly for the overall then it will be not useful. So the receiver just discards that type of noisy data. So that types of transmission is waste, and the overall cost of data transmission is simply waste. So we just decided ourselves to maintain error control mechanism for a protocol which makes the overall process reliable and efficient and accurate. Okay, and then flow control is the mechanism which is used to regulate the speed of data transmission between the sender and the receiver. Actually, which is the main thing. The data will be transferred from the sender to the receiver. It must be in a controlled manner. For example, if the sender is always it is in under faster network situation, and then if the receiver is not as much as faster than the receiver, then the sender, then it causes, sometimes it may cause overload to the receiver. So we just maintain a flow control mechanism like acknowledgement, so that the entire process will be easy. If the receiver is ready, then the sender has to send the data to the receiver. Okay, otherwise the sender has to wait for the acknowledgement from the receiver. So it makes the overall flow in a reliable manner. Okay, and then the last point is flow control. That's it. It makes the delivery so faster when compared with other things. And then types of data link protocols. There are two types of data link protocols that are suitable for noiseless channels and then suitable for noisy channels. Today I'm going to discuss only two topics, simplex and then stop and wait protocol, which comes under noiseless channel. The first one is unrestricted simplex protocol. The name itself provides that unrestricted simplex protocol transmits the data in an unrestricted manner. Okay. First, it is the simplest communication protocol used in the data link layer for transmitting the data. Actually, it is a one-way communication, one-way data transmission medium. These are all the features of the unrestricted simplex protocol. The first one is data flows only from sender to receiver. Okay, if in the unrestricted simplex protocol, data transmission takes place only from the sender to the receiver without any reverse communication. Here there is a single communication from sender to the receiver. The data will be transferred in a one-way communication. Sender always sends the data to the receiver. Receiver always receives the data from the sender. This is the simple overall communication which will be happened in the unrestricted simplex protocol. Okay, that will be shared in the other points, like the sender can send frames continuously. Yeah, sender always ready to share the data. The sender assumes I am a faster processing mechanism, I should share the data as soon as possible to the receiver. So it shares the data continuously without any interruption to the receiver. Receiver is also, it's like weather or temperature prediction. If I am placing a sensor in my room, or else if I am placing a weather prediction sensor, it actually, what it actually do means, it just sends the data and like temperature, and then sense the data. The sensor will sense the temperature, and then it will be shared to the connected monitoring system. It is a one-way communication. Weather has to be its temperature has to be sensed and then shared to the system. Likewise, the sender has to sense the data to the receiver. The sender has to sense the data to the receiver. Okay, and then the receiver is always ready to receive the data. Yeah, receiver protocol also assumes that the receiver is always ready and active, and its buffer space is also capable to receive all data frames which will be shared by the sender. And then no error checking is performed. The protocol does not contain any mechanism to detect or correct transmission errors. For example, if noise if there is a noise during the data transmission, the receiver still accepts that corrected information and it processes that immediately without any checking. And then the next one is no flow control mechanism is used. Yeah, the sender sends data according to its own speed without checking the processing capacity of the receiver. Okay, it makes no flow control mechanisms in the receiver side or else the server side. And then the last one is assumes an ideal error-free channel. Overall communication or overall data frame has been shared to the receiver, but protocol assumes that there is no error or there is no noisy which will be occurred in the data frames during the transmission. It just receives the data and then transforms the data which is suitable for another layer, and then it shares the data without any interruptions. Okay, this makes for example, if there is a computer, there is a communication inside a computer mechanism. Yeah, we know. So that simulation environment may assume a perfect channel. Okay, and then This is the working of unrestricted simplex protocol. Assumes this is the sender and then this is the receiver. The sender transmits the data frame continuously to the receiver, and then there is a request from the sender to the receiver. He always assume the receiver requests me for a data, so I am just shares the data to the receiver without any acknowledgement from the receiver. Okay, the first one is the sender transmits the data frame continuously. Yeah, for example, the sender continuously sends data frames to the receiver without the acknowledgement that the receiver is correctly received that data. We may consider the example like a radio station continuously broadcast the overall audio signals to the users, but there is no assurance that all listeners listen that things. Okay, and then the receiver accepts the incoming frames. Yeah, the receiver receives and process all incoming data frames immediately without any error checking, and then the entire data will be shared or transformed to the format which will be suitable for the other layer. Here we can consider the example like television broadcasting. Here the video signal has been broadcast by the television system. We just seize that information, that's it. Okay, and then the next point is no acknowledgement or send back. Yeah, the receiver does not send any acknowledgement or confirmation message to the sender. We can assume that viewers watching the television programs and without sending any confirmation back to the broadcasting station. This is the basic thing which will be happened in the unrestricted simplex protocol, and these are all the advantages of unrestricted simplex protocol. The first one is very simple and easy to implement. The protocol is very simple because it does not use any flow control or error control mechanism, so it is easy to implement also. Okay, and here there is a simple communication devices use these protocol because it requires less hardware and software. Okay, and the next point is fast communication because no waiting is involved. Yeah, the communication speed is high because the sender transmits frames continuously without waiting for acknowledgement. So here the communication is so and so fast when compared with other protocols which will be available in the data link layer protocol. And we can assume the examples like radio broadcasting, which provides a continuous transmissions without interruptions to the listener. And then disadvantages of unrestricted simplex protocol. First one is no control over data flow. Yeah, the protocol does not control the speed of data transmission between the sender and the receiver. For example, a fast sender may overload a slow receiver with too much of data. Okay, the next point is data may be lost if the receiver is busy. Yeah, frames may be lost in some situations when the receiver cannot process incoming data quickly enough. These situations may cause data loss also. Okay, frame loss also. We can consider the examples like a slow computer may lose incoming packets during heavy network traffic. Okay, and then cannot detect errors. Yeah, the protocol, that is the unrestricted simplex protocol, cannot identify corrupted or damaged frames during the transmission. Incorrect data caused by the electrical noise cannot be detected by the receiver, and it cannot be corrected by the receiver also. Okay. The next thing is simplex stop and wait protocol. The simplex stop and wait protocol is an improved protocol. Here we use flow control for reliable data transmission. Note, we were going to use only flow control mechanism here. Okay, these are all the features which will be available in the simplex stop and wait protocol. First one is communication is still one way. Yeah, here is also the communication is between the sender and the receiver. Okay, in this protocol data frames are transmitted only from sender to receiver at a time, while acknowledgement travels in the reverse direction. A computer may be it's like a sender can send the data to the receiver and waits until the acknowledgement, until it has to receive the acknowledgement message from the receiver also, so that it can send the another frame to the sender, receiver. Sender sends one frame at a time. Yeah, the sender transmits only one frame before waiting for a response from the receiver. Okay, we may consider the examples like a file transfer system sends one packet and waits before sending the next packet. Okay, and then the next point is sender waits for acknowledgement before sending next frame. The sender waits for an acknowledgement message before sending the next frame. For example, online payment system. There is a confirmation before processing the next step. And then prevents a receiver's overflow. The protocol prevents a receiver's overload by allowing enough time to process each frame. A printer processes only one print job at a time to avoid memory overflow. It will be a good example for these processes. And then working principles of stop and wait protocol. Here is also a diagram for sender to the receiver. Here the sender has to send the data to the receiver. Once the data frame received by the receiver, then the receiver has to share an acknowledgement message to the sender. Then only the sender will share the data. Okay, which will be displayed as a point by point. Okay, first one is sender sends one frame. The sender first transmit a single data frame to the receiver, and then the receiver accepts and process the received frames successfully. Okay, we may consider the example like sender sends one frame, a computer sends only one block of data to a server, and then a server receives uploaded data from a client computer. It is like this process. First, the computer has to send one block of data to the server, and then a server receives uploaded data from a client computer, and then a receiver sends an acknowledgement message. If the receiver sends an acknowledgement message after receiving the frame correctly, if there is any issue with that data frame, then it will it won't share that acknowledgement message also. Okay, and then sender waits for acknowledgement before sending the next frame. The sender remains idle until it has to until the acknowledgement is received from the receiver. Advantages of stop and wait protocol, which prevents data loss due to receiver overload, and which means the protocol reduces the data loss because of the flow control. That is, data has to be shared from the sender to the receiver as a one-way communication, as a one data frame, and then it has to share the another data frames when it has the acknowledgement for the first frame. Okay, it makes the data loss and then easier to understand and implement. It was more easy for us to implement the entire process. The protocol uses a simple transmission and acknowledgement process that is easy to implement. For example, we may use these type of communication in educational networking models. We must wait for the acknowledgement from the students to process the next topics like that. And then disadvantages of stop and wait protocol. Communication speed is slower. First one is, the transmission speed becomes slower when compared with unrestricted simplex protocol, because the sender waits for acknowledgement after every frame. For example, we were processing the large file, then it has take more time because each packet requires confirmation, and then it has to be split up into data frames and then shared to the receiver, and then we had to wait for the acknowledgement. If there is any issue like we can't get the acknowledgement due to network traffic, then it may cause duplicate duplicate data frames also to the receiver. And then sender remains idle while waiting for acknowledgement. This will be the first difficulty we will face in that thing. That is, the sender cannot transmit additional frames while waiting for acknowledgement from the receiver, which makes our system, that is the server, idle. Okay, and then comparison between unrestricted simplex protocol and stop and wait protocol. The first one is flow control. Unrestricted simplex protocol does not provide flow control, whereas the stop and wait protocol provide flow control by using acknowledgement. And then error control. The unrestricted simplex protocol does not support error control, whereas the stop and wait protocol provides limited error control through acknowledgement. And then speed. The unrestricted simplex protocol is faster because the sender transmit frames continuously, whereas the stop and wait protocol is slower because the sender waits for acknowledgement after each frame. And then reliability. The unrestricted simplex protocol is less reliable because it cannot confirm successful delivery of frames, whereas the stop and wait protocol is more reliable because acknowledgement ensures proper frame delivery. And then acknowledgement. The unrestricted protocol doesn't use acknowledgement, whereas stop and wait protocol use acknowledgement to provide flow control for every successful frame. And then last, data transmission. In the unrestricted simplex protocol, frames are sent continuously without interruptions. There is no interruptions. And then whereas in the stop and wait protocol, only one frame is sent at a time. Next thing is receiver handling, which will be not given here. I am just tell those things also. In the unrestricted simplex protocol, the receiver may become overloaded due to continuous transmissions of data frames. So, but in stop and wait protocol, which prevents the receiver's overflow by the controlling of transmission speed. Thank you.